Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining me again for this final episode in my Blue Thunder model build. If you remember the last episode, I went through and I got all the lights working, the search lights, got the nav lights working on both sides of the helicopter, the red side for left, the green for right, and the nav lights on the back tail section here. So now moving on, this whole area here needs to be black. I've sanded down the middle there to kind of get rid of the seam, and the cockpit goes inside there. So what I'm going to do is I've taped the whole thing off and I'm going to shoot this black. I'm not going to really be able to do much once it's together. So I'm going to use my Army Painter black. I sanded down that seam so once I paint it, when I put it together, it should look pretty seamless. And there it is, painted black. You can't really see the seam down the center there. So now I've gone and I've mounted a solder board here. Originally I was thinking about having the helicopter on its landing gear, drilling a hole through here, running the wires from the board through a hole, and run them down the landing gear and just have it in a landed position. I've decided to mount it slightly in the air like it's taking off. So I've clamped the two halves together, drilled out a hole so that I have this rod here and it will fit right inside there so that I can mount it. I've got my LED lights on both sides here, and I'm going to go ahead and solder them to this board. I have a positive on one side, negative on the other. This is for the lights that are always on. So which would be my green and red lights, and then the search lights. I've attached my resistors here for the lights. Got a positive wire here. And this is going to be for my searchlights in the front. Their positive is each going to go to a resistor, and they're going to go together to a separate switch so they can be turned on separately from the rest of the model. Go ahead and hot glue these guys into position here. And I've got grounds for the searchlights, grounds for my side nav lights, and resistors for the nav lights. And then I've got the two searchlights up here, or one soldered so far, going to one wire that will go down through the tubing to turn on the searchlights. Then I have my grounds here from the flashing nav lights that will go down through the tubing and connect to my Arduino trinket board. Like many models before, I have a lid here from a jewelry box case. This one's the lid, so it's thinner than the usual ones I use, but this will work. I'm going to mount my USB power board to the side here, and then I have these switches. I'm trying to decide which ones to use. I might use the smaller blue ones to power on the entire model, and another switch to power on just the searchlights. So I've cut out some holes here for my switches and for the USB power board. The board fits right there and a USB will plug in. And I am going to use these two buttons here to power on. I've also drilled a hole through the center here for the sizing of my tubing. And I'm going to paint the entire thing with a Rust-Oleum flat primer. I like the color of it a little bit darker gray, kind of like concrete, so I'm going to keep this color and have the tube go right there. Then I'm going to go ahead and mount my power board here. I'm just going to use some hot glue and hot glue this sucker right into place there. Then put some more on the outer edge to keep it from coming out when you push the connector in. I've also hot glued my switches into place, as well as that power board. And the switches, you can push them, they'll turn it on and off, and they're secure in there with that hot glue. So I was going to mount the board on the back of the cockpit. I'm now mounting it to the base. I'm going to run my wires through the tubing, that way I can update if I need to. Now I'm going to secure the cockpit into this one half here, and I'm going to put it into position, and then I'm going to glue it in place. So I've glued it in place, and then I've run the grounds and hots from the cockpit into this board so that they will power off the main power coming through the tubing. So for the tubing, what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to mount is I have this slightly larger tubing. I'm going to cap it here so that my tubing will lock in place inside this little brass piece here. And what I've done is I've cut this at an angle so the helicopter will be slightly tipped like it's taking off. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hot glue this into position so when tubing goes in, it'll go in at an angle. Well, it'll go in straight, but the helicopter will appear to be in an angle, and it'll be tipped slightly down and look as if it's actually taking off in flight. So that's being held in place with super glue. And then I finished gluing it into place with some hot glue to hold it nice and secure. And you can see that there. I got that other piece glued in the top there that will keep the tubing from pushing all the way through. So I've now wired the nav lights from the other half and the searchlight from the other half. Have those wires running through. I've secured them to the board. And I'm going to do one quick test before I put this all together, and everything is firing up and seems to be working just fine. Doesn't seem to be any pinched wires, any bad soldered spots. So what I'm going to do is pull this guy apart really quick because I need to mount the rotors in before I secure the two halves together. So I've got the rotor here, and there are two little holes here which mount to these two pins here on the inside, and I'm going to glue that into position. So I'm just going to take it, have some super glue on there, and I'm going to push it into those pins and hold it in place for a few seconds until that dries. And that's dried in place. You can see it's secured and the rotors spin freely. So now I've got the two halves together, once again testing all the lighting. I have it clamped together, and I'm going to start going through and gluing the two halves together using my Tamiya extra thin liquid cement. With the two halves glued together securely, I'm going to start going through and sanding all the seams now. And I've sanded down this bottom side here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sanding the seams down the top side as well. And you can see I've sanded down this top spine area here and also along this engine. And then I've also sanded some on the tip. So with the seams sanded down, I'm going to go ahead and start attaching the rest of the parts to the Blue Thunder. Start out by attaching the landing gear here and just apply some glue and hold those in position until they dry in place. Go ahead and attach the other landing gear to the other side here. And you can see the landing gear on there and it supports it. Then I'm going to go ahead and start working on these engine pods. These are in 3 pieces. We have these pieces that glue together, and then you have this piece that glues onto the outside there. And that's the engine pod that goes on the side. So I've got both of these glued together now, and I'll sand them down and trim the edges up, make it look a little bit cleaner. And then I'm going to go ahead and just glue these into position on the side here and hold it until the glue sets. And I got both of those engine pods glued in place now. Then we have the rear little tail fins. Those are 2 pieces. This glues onto the edge like so. I got both of those glued together here, left and right side. And then the one piece slides in through this hole, and it's half a round piece, it's flat, and then this other side is also round but has a flat edge, and they just slide together so that they are in the exact same position. So I'll just slide the other side in here. And we've got both of those glued into position. But while gluing, I accidentally dropped this and snapped off my top nav light, which has seemed to disappear, so I need to fix this now. So what I've got is I have a sprue here from, I believe, an R2-D2. This is like a little lightsaber, I think, that goes inside. And I'm going to use this little piece here as the housing for my nav light. So I'm going to go ahead and drill a 1mm hole through the center of this lightsaber piece here. And then trim it down to the length that I would like the housing to be, trying to match roughly what the housing was like on the original kit. And you can see I have this little teeny piece here with my millimeter hole drilled through the center. Then I'm just going to push some millimeter fiber optic through, and I'll make the bottom of it flush with the piece and then cut the top at the right area. So here it is sticking out of the housing. I've sanded down the tip of that to diffuse the light, and it's flush with the bottom of the housing. Then I'm just going to glue it in place on the top here with some of my micro crystal clear. And it works just fine. I don't think it's as bright as it was, but just the two pieces touching each other, it does light up and work. Then I've just added some putty around it here, and then I'll sand that down a little bit and smooth it out. Now we're moving on to this area, which is the cover that goes around the exhaust on the back of the engine. I need to putty in and sand down the seam here. And I've gone and I've done that. I've sanded it, added a little bit of putty in there. And then I've gone and primed it with some Tamiya fine gray primer. And it's looking good there. You can't really see the seam. And this piece will just fit right over this right here like so. Now we have our Gatling gun. These are all the pieces for that we've got here. We have these two halves of the gun, then we have this other pod section here, and these all to go together, and this is the hinge so that it can move up and down. And then here we have the tip of the gun barrels, which glues right onto the end here. So I've got that all glued, and you can see how that rotates on that little piece there, moves up and down. Then I've gone and sanded the seam on the left side, and I need to work on this other side too and sand that down. That should not be there, that little divot there. So I've gone and I've sanded that down smooth, and this is based on reference photos of the one from the movie. Then I've gone and I've primed it, and you can't really see the seam lines there at all now. It looks nice and smooth like it does in the movie. And then this piece will just fit right into the nose here. This goes up there. And then we have this top piece, the night vision cameras and the cameras for the Gatling gun. And then I've gone and I've primed that piece also with some Tamiya fine gray primer. So that's ready to be painted. Then we have these here, which are the ammo for the Gatling gun. These will eventually attach to the underbelly here, up towards the front, to feed the Gatling gun the ammunition. And these I've primed with some Army Painter matte black primer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of my Folk Art nickel paint and rub it over the top of this and make it look like metallic housings just holding all of the ammunition for the Gatling guns. And you can see I've got those painted up here. Then moving on, we have the canopy. I've gone and I've taped this off because it needs to be painted, the frame. I've also taped the underside because I'm going to paint both sides so that the frame looks like it goes all the way through. Then we have the microphones, these two pieces which go on the top of the canopy, and I'm just going to use a little bit of thin cement here and just glue these two pieces together like so. And I've gone again and primed these with the Tamiya fine gray primer. Now I've gone and I've taped off the entire cockpit on the inside so that I can paint the body of the helicopter with the proper color. And I have this Viejo liquid mask which I'm going to go around the entire helicopter with and cover up all of my fiber optics that are going to be lighting up to protect them from the paint when I airbrush the paint on here. So I've got those protected. I have the other side covered up. I have my nav light on the top tail fin there, and the rear tail fin light as well. And then I also filled in both searchlights to protect them from any paint. Then I've gone and I've also taped off the propellers since I've already painted those previously. Don't want any blue paint getting on those. And I've gone and I've primed the entire body with my Tamiya Fine Gray primer. I need to go back and resand a little bit, smooth it out. Done a pretty good job on the underbelly. Need to fix a few spots here. And I need to fix a little bit here. Shows up in the primer. And then a little bit in the front here. So I've gone and sanded it. Now I'm starting with some Tamiya Sea Blue. I painted this housing over the exhaust with the sea blue. It's not a bad color. It's got a bluish, very dark bluish gray color. I think I'm going to mix a little bit of this IGN gray with that same blue to lighten it up just a touch. And you can see the difference here. I actually like my mix better. It's slightly lighter, and it actually looks closer, I feel, to the color of the actual Blue Thunder. So I'm going to go ahead and start airbrushing the body now. This is my mix of the sea blue and the IGN gray, and I'm just going to start going over the entire body and filling it in and painting it until it's a solid color. Got the back half done, getting up here to the front portion. Got the front nose here. Gonna paint up the canopy as well, the frame around the canopy of the cockpit. And there we've got the entire body painted with the color that I did. And I like the way this is looking. I'm happy with the color. And here we have the canopy completely painted as well. And then I've also gone and painted these other pieces, the Gatling gun, the housing, the cameras, the microphone, and then also these little pieces here that go on the outside of the canopy and the nose. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to paint the blades of this propeller back here with some Tamiya flat aluminum, make them look like they're metallic. And you can see how that turned out there. And then on the exhaust here, I painted the entire thing with flat black. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Folk Art nickel, and I'm going to brush some of this on there to make it metallic. And then go through it with a Q-tip and buff it out. So I'm going to take that Q-tip and just start rubbing and buffing, trying to smooth it out and making it look more metallic. And you can see here there's some discoloration from the heat. So I'm going to use some Tamiya burnt blue and burnt red pastels. I'm going to start off with the blue here because in the photo there was blue around the outer edge. I'm just going to start rubbing this pastel over the entire end of this exhaust area here and stain it and tint it a bluish metallic color. And then I'm going to take my burnt orange and I'm going to do the front end, because again the photo it was a little more orangish red in the front and more blue towards the back end. Then I'm also going to just use some oil stain and go over the entire thing and just kind of make it look like it's dirty and burnt. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now for the exhaust of the engine here. And I've also gone and done a little detailing around some of these other parts which are actually going to be hidden by the cover, but I decided to paint them. And this will just go right over that painted area. And then this here, I'm going to do a little bit of black wash inside this area here just to make the color stand out a little differently, like it's some type of air filter area. And you can see just a little bit of a different shade there. Now it's time to move on to the decals. going to start out here with this one right here, and this is the red stripe which goes on the rear tail fin here, and I've wet that down with a little bit of my Microsol solution, and I've put this decal down, and I'm just going to let that set, and it should pull the wrinkles out. And then I'm going to add this number here on the side, and also this danger decal back here. And I got another decal to put on the side here. And I'm just going to continue going through and applying all the different decals that go around these stripes here on the front nose of the chopper. And you can see all these. There are some that are missing, unfortunately, that it didn't come with, but it still looks really good. And then I'm going to give the entire thing a coat of flat clear coat to seal those decals in place so that I can do a little bit of weathering. And then the barrel of my Gatling gun here, I'm going to airbrush with some Tamiya flat black. And I've got that all painted up there with the flat black, so you can see the barrels are different shade than the rest of it. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert the Gatling gun into the nose. I'm going to go ahead and secure that into place with putting the camera housing on top of it and pushing them together to hold it in place. Then I'm going to take this antenna piece here and just glue it into the front of the nose right here. I'm going to go ahead and take my ammunition chains. I'm going to go ahead and glue that to the underside of the belly in position on both sides here. And you can see those are glued in place now on the underbelly. Then I have these little pieces of plastic, which are glass that go in the sides here. I'm going to go ahead and put these in place and then do a drop of some Tamiya fine cement in there and glue those into position. Now it's time to start going around the helicopter and removing all of my liquid latex, covering all of my fiber optics and these LEDs for the searchlights. And I've glued the front housings onto the searchlights now. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of the liquid latex from all of my fiber optic nav lights around the body of the helicopter. Then I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the tape from the blades of the rotors here. We got all that removed, and time to move on to removing the tape from the interior cockpit area. And then moving on, we'll remove the tape from the cockpit canopy. Carefully remove that without scratching the canopy itself. And there we have the canopy with a nice painted frame. I'm going to go ahead and start applying decals to the canopy frame. I got all these decals to outline for the red painted areas of the frame around the cockpit. This one tore, so I'll just fix it here. That looks good. Oh, that looks good. Finish up all the rest of these around here. And there we have all the red stripes around the framework of the canopy. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue the microphones onto the top here of the canopy. Got to line these little holes up with the pins of the microphone, and then I'm just going to glue in a position. And I've got those glued in place, and now I have these two little antennas which glue to the outside frame. And I've gone and I've glued those in place now as well. So everything is done there on the outside of the canopy. Then we have the underside here controls that go on the underside of the canopy, the flight controls, and that'll just go on the bottom right here. And then I've gone and I've glued that and secured that into place as well. So the entire canopy is now completed. You can see in this photo here, there's some cables coming out of the side cameras going into the body. There's also some cables coming out of the microphones going into the little housing of it. So I'm going to use a little drill bit here. It's like a 1/2 millimeter drill bit. You can see I've drilled 2 holes there. Then I've gone and I've drilled 2 holes in the side of the helicopter. And I'm just going to take some of my wire from some of the LEDs and I've fed it through the holes and then just done a drop of liquid cement to glue them in place. And you can see I've got the other wires here on the other side glued. Also going to do the same up top here. I'm going to drill through the microphones. You can see the little holes in the ends of the microphones and the little holes in the base here. And I'm just going to take a couple pieces of LED wire and feed it into those holes and glue them into place, just like in the movie helicopter. Then we've just attached the canopy to the cockpit here. Then I'm going to go over the entire body and start doing a little weathering, a little bit here on the steps of the landing gear. Do a little weathering with some gunmetal pastel here on the Gatling gun. Just kind of give it some depth and make it look a little more metallic and used. Gonna do some black washes around the entire helicopter, like the landing gear, antennas, and just various areas. Gonna move on to my tube here. I've marked it. I'm gonna make it kind of short. I don't want the helicopter up too high. So I've cut it shorter and I've also notched out here for the wires in the base. And I've taped off just a little bit of the end here that will go inside the helicopter. And I'm going to go ahead and use my Tamiya Fine Gray Primer, and I'm going to leave it as this light gray color to contrast with the Blue Thunder. So then it's just running my wires through this tubing, and I'm just going to pull the wires through and push the tubing up all the way to the belly of the Blue Thunder here, and slowly I'm just going to push it into the underside. And you can see how it's at an angle there, and I've super glued that in place. And then I'm going to run the wires down through into the base and slowly push the tubing into the base and just have it popping out just a little bit, like a 1/4 inch. Well, then I'm going to secure that to my base with some hot glue. Just going to squirt some all around the tubing there, and you can see it's all secured. Then I've run my hot wire for the searchlights to this one switch, and then all of my ground wires are going to the appropriate pins for the flashing on the board here. So with all of that being done now, it's time to present you with my completed Blue Thunder model build. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.